So welcome to today's midnight training session. Today, in our series of 15 core training sessions, we'll be covering a basics viewing of our print estimation system. In Midnight Print Estimating, there are a few key components that can be established and built in the admin menu, and some other areas that are mandatory to be built in the warehouse module. I'll start by pulling up an instance of our print calculator. And in here, we'll be able to see the various components that we'll be building in our admin menu. That way we can have a clear understanding of what we're going to be referencing when we access the various areas of our admin screen. I'll snap a screenshot of our calculator as it loads. So that way we have a simple view to jump back to each time. And after reviewing the admin modules set up for the various areas of the calculator, we'll then jump into this for a few examples of how to properly use it to get the numbers that you're looking for. So to start things off, you'll see that within our calculator, we have several tabs on the left-hand side of the screen. These 9 tabs correspond to many of the core areas in the admin module, which update the data that you see within them. Some of them are more commonly used than others, such as the press, color, and paper details, all 3 of which are mandatory. Others which are not mandatory may be the cutter details or the additional services tabs, as well as the volume pricing and notes tabs. The imposition will likely automatically calculate itself for you. And the run details is simply a summarized information block to let you know more information on the info of what you're consuming as far as resources and time. We'll start by looking in our admin menu under the global settings option. In here, we have a few defaults that we can establish before we get too far into using our calculator. We'll see these controls under the Estimate/Orders tab of our global settings list. In here, we'll notice there is a print estimate markup percentage. This value is a default percentage applied to newly entered jobs as well as freshly entered templates within the system. By having a value here, this prevents you from creating a job that includes 0 markup on its job, which is important as our print estimation system is a cost-plus system, and thus if there's no markup, then you would be calculating everything at cost and potentially selling it for that same price. You'll also see, as we scroll on down, details starting from here, the Add Print Item default service. When you create your services in Midnight, you can give them the command to do one of several actions, be it launch a service wizard or a series of choices, or launch the print calculator, of which we have 3. In here, if you have the standard print calculator assigned, then when you select that service, it will launch the calculator for you. Alternatively, under the quick links of an estimate or order, there will be an Add Print Item button. If you use that to add your service, then this would be the service that's referenced. This would be important for conveying information down the line as far as taxable status, machine information for scheduling on our dynamic job board and production reports, and also GLID information for extracting into your accounting software. Next, we have the Allow User to Edit Calculated Fields. When this feature is enabled, certain areas that calculate themselves, such as the number up for the imposition details, will no longer calculate by themselves fully. This allows you to freely insert information to get the numbers that you may be looking for. However, this does limit the system's ability to recalculate after making changes, meaning that if you were to use this infrequently, it would probably be wisest to have it disabled and only turn it on for rare instances of use, such as Dutch cutting. Next, we have the print calculator more details. With our new view, this has become obsolete, but with our legacy view, this is simply a display option to change how tall the print calculator's displayed information will come up. We also have the default spoilage field, which is an option to define your spoilage as either referencing a percent or a hard count. Whichever one you select will reverse calculate the other one for you. And this is simply the default option in which you use as a unit of measure. We also have price matching. Price matching in the print calculator is a system that allows you to override a calculated cost or price with one that meets the needs of whatever it is you're looking to do. The convenience to price matching is that it does not overwrite the information or cost that you would be using when generating your job. So if you have this enabled, you can freely bill your customer a specific value despite having a calculated value of being something different. A common scenario of this is if you have a job that runs out to, say, $150.02, and you wish to round it down to 150. Finally, we have the print calculator bleed choice. When filling out a press to operate within your calculator, if it's an offset machine, you may have to accommodate for bleed. In this case, you can fill in a value of a minimum bleed, so that way whenever you're adding a new press, there's always a bleed present, so that way you can properly assess the stock that you'll be using in terms of the printable space on your paper. After this, we have our print module itself, which can be accessed by hitting the expandable list for print, and then accessing one of our many options under here. We'll begin with our press standard service. In here, you can define your different presses or machinery that you'll be able to run your jobs on. To add a new instance, under the quick links, you can select Add Press Standard. Alternatively, if you open up one of your presses, you can select the Copy button to create a copied version of the press that you're in, giving you the ability to fill out small adjustments to accommodate for one of your differently entered pricing methods. When creating a new press, the mandatory options begin from the top, in which you identify whether your press is an offset machine, digital, or one of our wide format presses. I'll have a dedicated session towards wide format, so I'll skip this one for now, leaving digital as key or as offset for an additional layer of print detailing. Under a digital machine, you have the ability to select a run type of either one-sided or two-sided as its default. You can also list an averaged hourly rate, which will affect your job costing, your average impressions per hour or production speed, your spoilage percent, which is in reference to the consumed inventory on the job, your pricing for black or for color clicks, a sheet margin, as well as a registration mark choice, which cuts into the printable space of the sheet that you'll be running through your machine. And lastly, the run sheet length and width to determine the maximum size of stock you can fit within your press. In order to determine what kind of stock you'll be running through your press, Depending on whether it is sheet fed or roll fed, you can select that under the material type. And this will correspond to the inventory records material type. So that way your available inventory list on the calculator will only populate with paper that can actually fit in your machine. If you're running an offset press, you'll see the options change a little bit. You're given the choice to select a press check value, which is effectively a flat cost that's added to your print job. You can fill out information on your plates, such as the average cost per plate, as well as the maximum amount of impressions you can typically get from one of your plates. You can accommodate for a color bar in addition to the registration marks for your printable space, as well as a gripper. Additionally, Make Ready can be built and tracked in here as a standard, in which you can identify the amount of time assumed to be used with Make Ready, the amount of sheets that can be used with Make Ready, the repeat time and sheet count, as well as wash up and repeat wash up times. All times here are entered in intervals or percentages of an hour, meaning that if you were to select 0.5 hours for Make Ready, that would imply 30 minutes of time spent. Finally, under the Make Ready type, you have the option to define either a press Make Ready choice or color unit Make Ready choice. As expected, this means that you can have Make Ready assigned to the entirety of the job itself, or you can have one set of Make Ready sheets be run through the machine based on each color used. To reference the colors that can be referenced on an offset machine, you can select them under the Print Ink Management list. Under here, you can list either some generic colors or your specific spot colors or Pantones, as well as other choices, aqueous, metallic, etc., with an average cost per pound. After creating your colors or color instances, you can then access the ink group list. In here, you can create a new group of ink consolidation, or you can access one that you already have created. To add new inks to your ink group, you can select them from the drop-down menu here. And as you add them to your ink group list, this determines the amount of colors which should be used, additionally referencing the amount of plates that get calculated and consumed on an offset print job. The cost per pound will be averaged out of all of the colors that are included in a group. In this case, we'll have an average cost per pound of $6.45. Whereas on another group, we may have an average calculated differently. This one in particular referencing two colors plus a third that vary pretty wildly in terms of cost per pound. To add a new instance of data, such as ink, to this ink group, you can select your choice here at the bottom. You can click the Save This button to commit it. In addition, if you wish to delete one of the choices from this list, you can simply click the X to delete that line item. To go one step further, if you were to add new inks to your ink setup, you can add new inks by filling out data here in the bottom row with your ink code, ink name or description, as well as the cost per pound. Finally, if you need to edit the contents of one of these rows, you can click the Edit button. In here, you're given the choice to edit any field that has a change in terms of format, such as the description here, noticing that a text box has appeared around it for you to adjust. To commit your changes, you can click the Save This button, or to cancel your changes, you can click the Cancel. Returning back to the press standards list, we'll see under our general view that I do have several instances of presses that appear to be entered multiple times, such as my Baby Dick, 11 by 17, 1 color and 2 color, or many of my Heidelbergs. You'll notice that in these cases, the impressions per hour and the hourly rates are slightly different. This is because our system's press handler does not necessarily calculate the differences of speed or cost based on the amounts of colors used or type of job being run. You can build a few different presses to accommodate for these scenarios, such as a one-sided or two-sided press, as well as a press built around the consumption of one or more color combinations. In this case, I'm able to use my presses by selecting them on the calculator to get a pretty quick and accurate expectation for my cost. Next up, we have our warehouse modules inventory. Inventory in Midnight is not necessarily a print exclusive field or feature. You can use inventory for tracking quite a bit of info, such as consumable materials for shipping and distribution, or storage for other goods that you may be housing for a client. I'll cover details on how to add inventory in our inventory focused training session. To reference how inventory refers to the print calculator, we can find all the details listed in the paper details tab within a particular item. In here, you'll see that for my envelopes, I have a blank list of information. But in one of my other items, such as my 17 by 11 80-pound gloss stock, I have under my paper details the ability to fill out choices that will reference this much more accurately. To start, you have the options to place a vendor and color, which are simple text bits for information. These have no bearing on the actual information for cost calculation, meaning that we can fill this out however we need. Our material type that we select here, we'll notice is either sheet or roll. This references the presses sheet or roll handler to determine what kind of machinery your stock can fit through. Notice that when I select sheet, my options here don't change on the right side, such as my parent sheet length and sheet width. But if I were to select roll, I'd have slight changes. Whoops. In which you'll be able to enter the roll length in inches. The unit cost is a simple value that allows you to determine what your cost is for your item as you're purchasing it. The finish, opacity, brightness, and grade are more related to search filters to allow you to search and sort your inventory within your calculator based on specific criteria. You notice that the finish and grade in particular are specific fields when the names exist. These names can be created in the admin menu under the admin menu's print finish or print grade choices, allowing you to customize your search and sort options. Alternatively, the brightness and opacity are simple 0 to 100% options. As you fill those out, that will also give you a secondary method of being able to search and sort your paper. The parent sheet length and sheet width, or in the case of a roll, the roll length and roll width, will determine how your inventory fits into your press, if it does at all. In here, I would typically enter my information matching what my item name or item description has. I can apply my basis weight, M weight, caliper, and GSM for information related to lift tracking and cut information for our built-in cutter. And for costing, I can enter my cost per 1,000 sheets, which will be referenced on a sheet fed operation, or my cost per cylinder weight, which will be referenced on a roll fed operation. This works in tandem with the paper markup, which allows you to apply markup to your stock in addition to markup for the job itself. There's also the weight per square foot and cost per square foot, which are referenced for our wide format calculator specifically and wouldn't have any bearing on today's print calculator experiment. And then finally, we have the cover and text options. If you run your press as an offset machine, then you'll be able to add ink. The cover and text choices here indicate how the ink would need to be calculated to more accurately reflect the cost for the job itself. You'll see here is an Update All Templates button. We also had one in the Presses menu. These items reference the templates that you can build within the calculator. Alternatively, you can build your templates in the admin menu. These templates, when built, allow you to quickly enter small amounts or large amounts of information for your job, varying from just a template name to a completely built template, such as referencing the press, color combinations, paper details, and more. One thing to bear in mind in here is that you can modify many of the elements that come in from the areas in which you've selected them from. Such as under my paper details, the item I've selected has a cost per 1,000 sheets of $61.50 with a 0% markup. I could change this to say 62.5 and apply a 15% markup here. This markup applies before the general markup or global markup for the print job, meaning that your sheets or paper from roll is generally being marked up in two different ways. The paper cost will be listed as still referencing the cost, but the total sale price will reference both markups. There's a few different ways to add templates. You can either select to add a new one from the quick links list, much like in the Press Standards menu, or you can enter one that already exists, click the copy button, and then modify it by giving it a different name and little bits of different information. For instance, in this case, I'm in my 6x9 4x4 postcards. I have this one priced out and built to run on my Akiyama. But I may need to have a different version of this priced out if I'm running, say, metallic work. In this case, I'll click copy. I'm given a new template. My description name has been updated with a underscore copy to indicate where this came from. And I can rename this as needed. I I can also adjust the markup, noting that the 20% here is because of our admin menu's default. I can adjust the number of pages referenced, indicating that if we were to produce something complex, say like a book, we can track how many pages it is that we're running our sheets through to produce. And then I can fill out all the other pieces of information, be it cutter, paper details, press information, or even volume pricing. Finally, in the upper right, we have our pricing preview. In here, you can plug in an estimation for a quantity and a customer that you would be running this job for. By hitting calculate, if you have the core components of the calculator filled out, such as the press, color, and paper detail information, a print total will come up, indicating your total cost. And then a print with all services will come up, indicating anything after profit and other costing have been tied in. This also references the volume pricing modifiers, which explains why in this case the print total is actually a little different from the print with all services, noting the 10% pricing drop. When you've made a change and you want to save your template, you can click the Save button. However, to commit it and get back to your system to actually use it on the job, you need to click the Submit button. One final aspect of the calculator's general setup exists under the Services list. Under your standard services, you can have services created specifically for launching the calculator. And here I'll select one of my generic print services just to indicate that. Oops, this one references a wizard. In order to expedite my search, I'm able to select under my actions list the print calc service. This action gives me a very quick sort, allowing me to find what it is I need almost instantly. Now in here, what you'll see is core information to launch the calculator, specifically being the service action here of launch print calculator. There are two for wide format, as we have two different wide format calculators. There is the choice for launching a service wizard, which provides a series of choices to fill out to detail one of your services, such as a cutting services, how many cuts are you making choice series, or simply a no launch action, which implies that you just want to select your service and have the pricing applied to your job. In here, even if you select the launch print calculator service, the base price, minimum price, and setup fee are not applied to the pricing for this particular service. All of the pricing comes from within the calculator. Information here to the right, including machine department and machine, allow you to sort the options in which the dynamic job board has to reference your print calculator's service when preparing for scheduling. Typically, we would at least suggest having a print machine department to identify which machine it is that you're running on the calculators or the scheduling board. If you have a specific machine that you would use to run an operation, you can select that machine from this machine list, both of which are adjustable within the machine departments and machines list here on your left. The show on DJB calendar or show on shop floor / display view options allow your service to be logged as a time-based service, in which your employees can build time off of it for job costing. The auto schedule and schedule 2 days out is something that you can use, depending on whether or not you want to have our shop floor's calendar updated to show when your work is being done versus having a production manager actually determine that for you and schedule it manually. And finally, the print additional service checkbox is an option which allows you to tie in a service to appear within the print calculator's additional services list. Normally, a service will not exist within the calculator, but in some cases you may need that. In some cases, I'll have an addition of, say, a folding service, where I may want to tie it into the calculator, or one of a cutting, stitching, binding, or other bindery-based services. Let's take a look at scoring in this case. For scoring service to appear under our print calculator's additional services list, we check this box. And from here, we can give it a different method of pricing. The base price here on the left references its general cost, in this case 3 cents per. You may wish to change that to, say, 2.5 cents per, meaning that if we select this from within the calculator, we'll have one used price. And if we select it within the general estimate or order screen, we'll get a different price. You can also select your print additional services markup box to have the markup that would be listed as the gold markup applied to it for pricing. Finally, under the unit dropdown, we'll have a default to quantity as far as the per piece pricing goes. This can be changed to NA, which means it will not reference the quantity as listed in the header of the calculator. And instead, it will simply be a one-off, such as a $50 setup fee or a $200 proofing fee, depending on whatever your pricing and service structure is. Finally, while in here, the volume pricing does not apply to print calculator services, but it does work on additional services, meaning that if you offer a, say, 10% discount on embossing based on certain quantities, you can use this to update that. Now, we've covered pretty much all the components to get a print calculator job up and running. Let's take a look at one of our estimates or orders, and we'll actually build one. In here, I'll start by selecting my customer, filling out some general job information, fill in a core quantity, and when I'm prepared, I can select my print service from my print tabs service dropdown, bearing in mind that this can be any service within any department. This is just my suggestion. And now that I've brought up my calculator, I can either load in a template, build my own template, or fill out pieces of this print job bit by bit until I'm satisfied with my results. The templates you'll find available under the template name. And here I could say select my metallic postcards template. In here, you'll see my press loaded in, as well as my details along with the press, my updated hourly rate, my color combinations, my paper that I'm using, And if any other information is carried through, such as an imposition count or additional services, those are carried in as well. All of this leaves everything uncalculated until you click the Calculate button, in which case then your run details and run results columns will be updated accordingly. Make this a bit larger so you can see. This particular job for 5,000 4/4 postcards with metallic ink clocks in at a little over half an hour with a count of consumed stock of a little over 1,200 sheets, but a run sheet count of 2,500. The reason this part's different is because under the paper details, we identify that despite having our sheet listed as a 22 by 17, we are slicing it in half to a 11 by 17, and thus running 2 counts of the stock through each time for each portion of this job. We'll also see under the run details a breakout of press cost, plate cost, ink cost, and paper cost, which in combination with the services and or cutting cost give us a total cost before any markup is applied. The press cost is simply the hourly rate of the press times the time spent on the operation, plus any press check fees. In this case, we'll be referencing our $320 per hour, looking at our slightly over 30 minutes, taking advantage of any, or in this case, the lack of any make-ready time or wash-up time necessary for the job, and also accommodating in with the overage, spoilage, and additional run sheets to determine exactly how much time is going to be spent printing everything, both what the customer had requested and the additional make-ready for the job. The paper details affect the paper cost. This is a simple cost times sheets used, or parent sheets used. We'll see that we have the cost per 1,000 sheets with markup applied listed here, and this is what's being added in to the print total with all services after markup's been applied. We have the color details, which include 2 different groups of 4 color sets, which have their own coverage percentage and average cost per pound. And because of the amount of impressions that we're doing versus the maximum amount of impressions per plate, we can see that we have 8 plates run for this job. The additional services in this case feature a micro cutting service. If we need to select a new one, we could pick, say, perforation or drilling. As we pick other options, their prices will be added and integrated into the cost of this job. Knowing that if you have a service that has a wizard, the choices of the wizard will affect the pricing. You'll see here that I have a $250 charge for perforation with no markup. We save this, or calculate this, we'll see exactly what that means. This will update the service price total of $250 from 0. The reason for this is because our services cost of $112 is broken out to include the 2 markup-based services, whereas this $250 is a flat add-on. Everything summed together gives us a total cost of $721, and after markup is applied, a total sale cost of $1,140.73. We can use price matching to change this value to, say, $1,200 if necessary. Or we can leave it at 0, which allows us to push in the individual costing of all elements. By clicking submit, we do just that. Push all the components of this job into the actual order screen. We'll see under our print tab, we have our print service itself. And under our finishing tab, two other services, cutting and perforation in this case, as well as folding under our mailing tab to give us a consolidation for all of the elements of our print job. We also have under the inventory tab the stock that's required to complete this task. And we can view any of this on our invoices or work order reports as needed to convey information from sales to production as far as what exactly it is that needs to be done. This is one of our 5 standard work order reports. You'll see on this one, it creates a grid block specifically for the print component that we're just making here, in this case our metallic postcards. We'll have details on the sides of our document, as well as the press being used, stock being used, time expected to be spent, color information. And as we look down further, we'll see our additional services such as cutting and folding, and a scannable barcode for the inventory that's being utilized for this job. Additionally, the way this report works is that it generates an additional page housing only the inventory for the job. Meaning that if you have more than one item on this particular job, you'll have a page dedicated to show all items. You'll notice that our perforation, cutting, and folding don't appear anywhere else on this report. You can add them into the respective tabs. So die cutting here in this case. If you do this, then you'll have a service that's not necessarily tied to any one particular operation. Because of this, you'll be able to spot it on its own. We do have other reports that show this information in different ways. Our work order versions report, for instance, shows information a little differently. The print estimation block is a little bit more consolidated. And in order to determine what services are part of the print task, you'll see the moniker for print product in this case, letting us know that the print job itself is using these 1, 2, 3 services. Knowing that this die cut service here is not tied to any particular operation. Finally, once we've given our job a due date, we can then save it and look on our production board. In this case, we're looking at job 1688, and we'll see the different components for this job are all listed here as needed. We can see them under the task view by looking under the respective departments in which the service or services would fall under, with a display of estimation of time, as well as a rough calculation of when the task would have to start and when the task would have to end in order to be complete. We can also look in the other tabs to see the other information for other services, such as in this case the cutting, perforating, and die cutting, with estimations of time to complete the task. Alternatively, we can either click the order here, or under the order view, select the order. Upon doing this, instead of having to jump back and forth between departments to view all of the core information for our service, we can simply see everything in one single list, giving us a breakdown of all of the components of the job all in one screen. Finally, we do have several invoices that will display this information differently. You can either take advantage of our general invoices, such as invoice price, to see the list of all components singled out with full pricing to convey to your client. Alternatively, we have different reports that show this information in different ways, such as without the individual per piece pricing. One versions print services across one version versus all versions if you have a multi-version job. A summarized version consolidating same priced items, or our group billing invoice, which within our Quick Links' group billing module allows you to consolidate services together into a single item or as many items as you need to convey pricing as you would hope to, such as having one line for print, one line for mailing work, and one line for other, such as additional folding, embossing, foil overlay, etc. There are a few other components to the print calculator that I'll be able to focus on, but I'll be saving those for a secondary session or our advanced print estimation session. That will include elements such as wide format handling, full-on association with inventory deduction, and the inclusion of multiple parts or components to create multi-part jobs within a single print calculator. I'll also demonstrate how to use the cutter and how to customize the forms a little bit more to meet your needs. That said, this concludes today's print estimation training.